Hello and welcome to DigFin VOX, Voices in Digital Finance. I'm your host, Jame DiBiasio. If you enjoy the program, like, subscribe, do all that social media stuff. My guests today are Ankit Suri and Jessica Liu, co-founders of Planto, a Hong Kong-based fintech startup that is helping consumers with personal finance and banks with a range of digital projects. Ankit and Jessica spoke with me about their origins, how the business has pivoted, the fact that it's been profitable for a number of years, what that means for how they manage their risks, how they grow, the decisions they make, both to do things or not do things, and what could be the potential for an exit. Ankit Suri and Jessica Liu from Planto, welcome to DigFin VOX.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, Jane.
So we're going to talk today about, you're a startup here in Hong Kong. You're in the personal wealth management space, a tough space, but you're here after quite a few years. So I think, a budding success story in the ecosystem. I'd love to understand a little bit about the origins of your business. And then we'll talk about some of the pivots and where we're going to head after this. So, why don't you two give me a quick intro into really just how you met? Because I know there was, there's been other people involved in this business, but essentially you two are the face of Planto now. And would love just to understand how this whole thing got together and how you got it off the ground.
Yeah, sounds good. Jane, thanks for having us. So actually, Planto started back in late 2017. Actually, we were incorporated in 2018, but and initially the company sort of consisted of three co-founders, but the initial idea of Planto was actually a little different from what we are doing today.
Yeah,
but
sure.
the initial way sort of it all started out was it was sort of myself, Yusuf, and Taha, who came from sort of a personal financial management background, sort of digital banking background, and wanted to enable customers with a personal financial management sort of offering, which is modeled around sort of open banking. And then as we started the company, we had friends joining us. So Jessica joined us as a co-founder. But over the years, as the company has evolved, we have actually started focusing on the enterprise or the B2B segment, where we work closely with banks. And it's really been the last 3 years where Jessica and I've been working very closely with various financial institutions to actually map out this whole value proposition and seek value and find value for the company while doing so.
We'll get into that pivot and that new proposition, but I'd just like to hear Jessica's take on this. What made you join this little band of pirates?
Yeah, I mean, it was really, it's interesting because actually, when they first started out, I was just helping out on the side, right? Because I had a full-time job back then. And then I was just like, okay, I want to validate the solution that we had in the market, which was, personal finance management app. I wanted to validate like the solution. I wanted to see, if people really had this pain point. So I actually joined the startup weekend International Women Edition. So that was around March, and I basically went there, pitched the idea, and I've just heard so many people that are saying they have this pain point and that this app would just solve a lot of their issues. And they were, after that, even though it was just supposed to be a 2-day session, they came up to me, they actually asked me, when are you guys going to do? Are you guys going to actually launch it? And that's really when I was just like, oh, okay, this is really something that we should double down on. And that's kind of when I was like, okay, I'll just quit my job. I used to be in finance, and then I joined these guys, and and there's history.
Before we get into the new sort of business side of it, what is that pain point, Jessica, that you're identifying that so many people say they have, and has anything changed in the intervening years?
So the core pain point that we're seeing, it's something that is not only just a niche, but we're seeing a wider market, even ourselves, like the co-founders, the other executives, we all, or majority of us, came from a finance background or worked in banks, but we still struggle to manage our finances because there is no way during that time anyway, we could actually have all of our bank accounts in one place. Most people, they worked on Excel for hours per month to actually identify this. Some people don't even bother, which means they're actually missing out on a lot of, let's say, how their finances are. So that's kind of where that pain point is. And our solution at its core is to help users kind of aggregate all of their finances in one place. This is across all asset, liabilities, income and expenses as well, to let them get a view and insights on their financial profile.
And how do you track if that actually helps them?
Yeah, so actually, at the core of the platform, I think account aggregation, or sort of getting all your assets in one place, is the beginning of actually making smart financial decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So the way the platform looks at sort of the success criteria of the platform in itself is we have a marketplace of financial products where users can basically start to look at investing, start to purchase, sort of get various kind of loan decisions being made. So actually we've got a marketplace of products that associate with the product, as well as there are features in the app that actually help users understand what their financial health score looks like. So we're looking at various actions based on a defined financial health framework. And as we see sort of customers taking those, we are able to see the progress in the way customers are making smarter financial decisions. So it's end to end in the sense that we see people sort of making a financial decisions, they link it back to the app, we know they've done it, and therefore we see their net worth growing over time.
Is
Jim,
there?
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, if you don't mind, I'll supplement that too.
Please.
Because we're also very data focused. So we actually use a lot of tools to actually track, let's say, the retention rate, the engagement rate, and also which features tend to have more touch points in the app. So that's one indication of how we can see if our app is effective, right? Especially on a feature basis. And another way we can see it is that we're seeing a lot of organic growth in the beginning, where friends would tell their other friends to use our app, which is why our cost per acquisition was quite low for a finance app. So yeah, just supplementing on a more database.
And I guess two questions on this one. One is, we don't have like a proper open banking regime in Hong Kong today. It's been a very long, slow work in progress. So how do you get the data? How do you manage that? I trust we're not just scraping here, but maybe a little bit, I don't know. And so the first question is how you get the data. And then my second question is going to be looking forward is like, can you use AI to like create some sort of like digital relationship manager to like bring that kind of, like any kind of, I don't know if this could be a licensing issue, but advice or help to people to continue that journey of decision making. So who wants the data ingestion question?
Yeah, I mean, when we started out launching the consumer-facing app, there was actually no open banking. There is no open banking in Hong Kong. So in order to enable these functionalities, we had to, model out a technology that sort of perhaps helps the market validate why open banking is needed as well. So, we built up a technology that uses automation, some degree of screen scraping as well, and basically relied on consumer consent to help us, really figure out the consumer needs as well as the customer appetite for a product like that. We've been on that journey since, and looking forward to seeing how we can translate these learnings and sort of the technology that has evolved into when open banking launches in this region, and sort of leverage that expertise for financial institutions.
Jessica, personal assistant, viable or too much of a leap for where you're at?
I think it's a bit hard to say because it depends on priorities as well. Mm-hmm. The personal assistant, if let's say we get a lot of feedback from our customers who we do talk to quite a lot, that they really want to have an assistant to guide them, this is something definitely we can explore. But for now, I think it's just our goal right here is to promote the idea of IDS, like secure data exchange between banks. But in future, we won't rule that out at all. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and Jim, actually, on the note of the financial advisor, as we have worked with banks on the use cases around sort of personal financial management, it's not exactly advice yet because advice is often regulated.
Right.
But what we have definitely seen is banks wanting to give insights around customers' finances based on their data, right? So data-driven insights, and insights is the beginning of advice because advice can often be you know advice advice can be quite specific. So what we are doing is we are basically enabling guidance around customers, and obviously in our implementations with banks we hope to track the feedback from the customers on that in terms of how they are interacting with these insights, how they are acting upon them, and then sort of leverage that data to continue evolving. So I think advice is going to be an evolving process for us. We'll just have to figure out the regulatory aspect of it as we get there. But like Jessica mentioned, it's all about whether customers want it or need it. Because even though we know that there is advice gap, the question keeps coming back to us: are customers even looking for advice, right? Are they looking for advice from their banks or sort of fintech apps like us, or are they just happy going to friends or reading, listening to their sort of key influences? So it comes down to customer adoption.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So why don't we talk a little bit about the pivot then when you sort of expanded from consumer into business? So Hong Kong's it's a small market. I can imagine that it's probably tough to just have a business doing PFM in for 7 million people population. What else drove this decision, I guess, to expand into the enterprise side? What does it look like working with the banks more directly? And how is it similar and how is it quite different to what you were originally doing just on the consumer personal management side?
Yeah. So this all happened in 2019/2020 when COVID started. And as you can see, when COVID starts, banks, they're spearheading their digitization.
Right.
And because by the time, Planto has been around for around 2-3 years, and we've gained quite a traction in the market. So we had around 200,000 registered users back then. We peaked at number 2 on App Store in the finance category, above all the banking apps actually. And we were involved in a lot of, like I say, fintech week events talking about our propositions. So quite a few banks reached out to us and asking us, it came in different forms. It came in form of consultation, advice, also in terms of the product development, prototyping. How can we help them, let's say, build something that's similar to Planto? Because they know what we built is market validated. They know based on our sharing that we know which ones matter. And then we realize, if Planto is great, but if we actually worked with banks to expand these solutions to different institutions, our impact would be even greater. And so that's when we got involved. And to be honest, like for us, for me personally anyway, it was quite surprising, because you realize when you have your knowledge, from your experience, the banks really appreciate it, because it's something that is very hard for them, right, to get. So it's been a great process for us, and everything is about timing. Back then there wasn't IDS. Open banking was still very slow, but we're hoping that with IDS launching very soon, this will change.
Right. And just quickly explain what you've been using this term IDS. Many people probably don't know what that is.
So IDS is basically new policy that is launching in Hong Kong. It's actually already announced, but we'll see sort of when it goes live, probably later this year. But what it does, it enables banks to share data with each other. It's a form of open banking, which basically only includes banks, and I believe it's the licensed retail and the SME banks in Hong Kong who will be able to share data with each other. Details are yet to be announced on the exact scope of that data or how it will evolve over time, but that's basically Hong Kong's version of open banking as it's starting out later this year.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that. So this leads me to, I guess, one question around your business model, whether it's on the enterprise side or the consumer side, is all about an open banking model. which has been slow to non-existent to evolve here. We've seen other fintechs like Genie threw in the towel on this issue. Are you optimistic that this is a viable, I mean, do you have a plan B if open banking in Hong Kong turns out to be a damn squib? Is there another way to pivot to continue to grow and scale the business? Or are you sort of, is it all the chips are in on this happening?
So when we started looking at working with banks on sort of technology solutions, actually it was not something that was actually, we hadn't narrowed it down to only open banking use cases. I think the idea was that banks were reaching out to us because they trusted us as a team. They knew that we could execute. We were sort of extremely customer centric and could execute on customer insights to sort of deliver a great solution. So when we started sort of talking to banks, it kind of like extended to more than open banking sort of use cases. I mean, back then, virtual banks had started to launch. There was also the HKMA 2025 fintech strategy that had also come out. So digitization and sort of customer experiences were two other sort of themes that were becoming extremely important to financial institutions. So I think as part of the extension towards B2B, it was natural that open banking might be a little far out, but it doesn't mean that banks don't need to prepare towards leveraging data, right? And it starts out with use cases on digitization, use cases on customer experience, and lastly, how do we ensure that, or how do banks ensure that they're actually serving the underserved? And so that's when actually, specifically speaking, we also started looking into the SME banking segment as well, where we actually did a similar research and basically spoke to more than 50 SMEs, and ultimately we are working with the bank to actually enable the whole SME banking proposition for them. So for Planto as a company, it's all about providing value to banks. It doesn't have to be through open banking. Open banking is something it's something that we started out with. It's something that we have expertise in, but at the forefront of it, we are extremely customer centric, and we are going to evolve based on that.
Is your business primarily Hong Kong banks and the Hong Kong environment, or particularly with the B2B stuff, are you able to then turn that into a regional or a global business?
Yeah, so actually, we worked with a few banks in Taiwan on ESG propositions and also PFM propositions as well. And we're always diversifying our risk. We won't put all our eggs in one basket. So we're really looking at other regions who are focused on open banking right now. So as an example, right, you have KSA, Saudi Arabia, you have UAE, who both have been very, very ambitious in terms of what they want to achieve, which is great because they're welcoming a lot of overseas fintechs who have experience in these to get into the conversation as well.
Okay, that's great. And you guys, it's been about 6 years now since Planto has been around, and you're still here, which in this environment is a win. So what is the your funding situation? How are you making sure that you've got the funding that you need for now and going ahead?
So when we started out, we had raised a seed round as part of our consumer proposition. However, just when COVID was starting to hit, we sort of we turned on sort of various kind of revenue sort of aspects to the from the distribution that we had built up, and basically in a very short time we found ourselves as a profitable company. And the great thing about expanding our business towards B2B is that we don't need that level of burn on sort of investment as what a consumer proposition needs with all the marketing. So
Right.
actually we've been profitable as a company for the last sort of 3+ years, and we've been reinvesting those profits into R&D of new B2B products, as well as growing and expanding the team, not just in Hong Kong but in other regions as well, so that we have footprint in other parts of the world to actually start growing the market there. And I think one other thing around growth and funding is that Hong Kong's been a great start for us, because one of the things that we are seeing is that it's actually got a great organic growth opportunity. What it means is that a lot of banks who are here also have entities in other markets as well. So it is very natural for them to leverage a successful, implementation here, successful pilot here, and introduce us to the other entities, in other markets. And that's where we are seeing organic growth. And we don't think we actually need a lot of funding in order to achieve that.
Yeah.
So it's all been focused on profitability and reinvesting that.
Okay, that's great. I'm sure there's many startups that would envy that position. Are there any drawbacks? I mean, obviously there's always drawbacks working with VCs. We hear about those. Are there any drawbacks to not working with them in terms of? I mean, it sounds like you've already got your network because of your client base, but is there anything else that any other door openers that sort of thing could provide, or it's really just about getting up and running?
I think one of the advantage that we have seen from venture capital is that institutional investors specifically, they might actually be bullish on a particular sector, and they might invest in multiple companies in this space. So they might look at a company who's doing a similar thing in Asia and a company who's doing a similar thing in North America. And one of the things that could come out of that is that you actually can get access to insights or learnings that a similar company is having in another part of the world, right? Because as an investor, they're heavily sort of incentivized to ensure that both of them succeed. So I think access to insights is one thing. Secondly, I think as VCs often sort of have certain idea on sort of the trends and foresights from the industry as well. So I think getting access to that could be interesting, but I think it can become hugely advantageous if actually the LP base of that VC itself is actually potential client or a customer segment that we are targeting. So actually a VC could be extremely valuable in getting insights from them, or even connecting us to them as well, which can help a company grow.
Because obviously a global bank is going to have plenty of insights already. So that's great. So what's the plan then? I mean, where do you guys see Planto going as a business, as founders? At some point, some kind of liquidity event? I mean, maybe one of the banks buys you, or maybe you need to stay independent so you can work for multiple banks. How do you kind of see that future playing out?
Yeah, so maybe I'll input here. So actually for us, what we've learned in the past few years at Planto is things are always changing, right? Even in Planto, when we first started, probably some of us were like, oh, I want an IPO, or oh, I want to be acquired by, I don't know, we want to be a unicorn. But obviously, that's difficult, right? And I think that experience has led us to be very grounded in terms of like, okay, always be prepared for any potential scenarios. Like, in the past, we've had a couple of companies who've reached out to us about acquisition, and we had opportunities there. But I think for us, fundamentally, we just want to be focused on building the right product and providing it to the banks that need them at this point. So for us, in future, I mean, we welcome any any potential acquisition, potential IPOs, but I think we're quite grounded at this point, where we just want to focus on making profitability, making the business do well, and sustain it.
So obviously, you keep doing this for a while, and obviously the value of the business will go up a lot more. I mean, I guess that's sort of that's a no-brainer, I guess, from what you're saying. Yeah. What else? We've talked about risk management. You've tried to diversify your business. You've tried to diversify your client base, your geography. You've been sort of nose to the grindstone with just keeping the thing making money and not focusing on too much fancy stuff. What else have you learned as co-founders of a startup in the past couple of years? Any other key lessons for other founders?
I think one of the I think as founder, it's extremely important to be sort of opportunistic. I think in the time that we started out, we've gone through a pandemic, we've gone through somewhat social unrest in the city as well. And from the outside, it definitely looks like it's been a difficult time for companies within the city. But I think as entrepreneurs, it's actually more important to focus on the opportunities that are coming out of it, as opposed to just focusing on sort of the negatives. So I think the main thing is to be extremely optimistic, and is to look at what's that new trend that is coming because of the changes that are happening, right? There's a golden rule in entrepreneurship, is what I've learned is that every time something new happens, whether that's a war erupting in some part of the world, or whether that's a new regulatory policy that is coming out, there is going to be a change in the way demand cycles work, or demand works. So, can you actually be the one to leverage that? So that's basically what we have been doing. People associate us as an open banking company, but actually the things that we are doing with banks go way beyond open banking right now, right? And that's because we have always been extremely open to feedback, and sort of acting on that, and sort of evolving as a company and as people to fit ourselves into the opportunity.
Great.
Yeah, sorry. Just to supplement here, sorry, Jame.
No, please take us home, Jessica.
Because I just wanted to give an example of what I just echoing what Ankit was talking about, how things change due to timing, opportunities, and whatnot. I think a lot of people, like you guys also mentioned, see us as, let's say, a PFM open banking kind of company, but we have gone into solutions that we've never thought we would, when we first started Planto. So as an example, we've done the corporate SME banking side of things, and the next step we're actually focused on is the lending side. When we started building our machine learning models for PFM, we didn't know this could actually be very useful for, let's say, the credit assessment process. And that's when, talking to banks, in the past few years, we realized, okay, our models have been trained on millions of data. It can, generate insights in a matter of seconds. And now we're piloting this with a bank who is considering, using it in future. And, this is just very exciting. And I think this also comes down to having a good team as well. I think we've been very fortunate to have like a well-rounded team who is very focused on what we wanted to achieve collectively as well.
Yeah. And then last question, is there a point when you also, talking about, Ankit, you're talking about that optimism, finding the next trend. Jessica, you're talking about, trying new things with banks and finding yourselves doing even more interesting work that you never thought of. But is there also a point where you had to say no, that something is an extension that's too far? I mean, have you faced a situation like that where you had to maybe pull back from an opportunity because maybe it was a wrong turn?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't act on, we don't have anything in the world of blockchain or Web3 at the moment. So, there are certain areas that we as a company, even if we hear of an opportunity, we take a step back, and we sort of study that, we choose to analyze that as opposed to sort of act upon it. So I think we have a sort of a process in place internally to analyze these opportunities. So yeah, Web3 is just an example, and it can be a little counterintuitive as well, given Hong Kong is definitely trying to be a hub for that. But as a Hong Kong sort of incorporated, Hong Kong grown company, it's something that we haven't put our foot into yet.
Okay. Well, all right. Good example, and all things considered, probably a wise one. Ankit and Jessica, thank you so much for joining me on DigFin VOX.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jay.